Hey, what's up, Superdads? So today I'm coming at you with a concept that I think will help to clarify a whole lot of confusion. And I honestly can't believe that that I'm the first person that I've heard talking about this thing because there's a lot of smart people out there, a lot of researchers who this is their life's work. And I mean, it's important to me, but compared to them, I'm a hobbyist. I honestly think this is the concept though that you're going to be hearing about in the next couple of years once everyone gets their heads screwed on correctly. And this is a concept that really explains what drives hypertrophy, what you should be aiming at as somebody who wants to develop muscular size. And it's so obvious. Let's get right to it. So for a long time, people talked about time under tension or time under meaningful load, right? And there were problems with that. So like if if you're squatting, let's say 70% of your max, right? That's certainly a meaningful load. It's certainly creating tension, but it doesn't mean that every rep is driving hypertrophy. Like if you take 70% of your max and you do it one time, right? Uh, that rep isn't necessarily going to drive hypertrophy so much. And then you put it down, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. But you wait a whole lot in between, right? You may be accumulating a lot of time under tension by doing it that way, but you're not going to be driving hypertrophy very well. And so it wasn't a very good model. This has sort of morphed into effective reps. This is what people talk about a lot more now. Effective reps being, it's generally those reps that take place above and beyond 70% of your capacity. So let's say you can do something for 10 reps. Generally, the reps that from 7 until 10 are what they would call like effective reps. And these are the reps that drive hypertrophy. And a lot of this is connected to the fact that it seems pretty obvious at this point, mechanical tension is the main driver of hypertrophy. And so if you are, working close to your failure point, then you're having to create more mechanical tension. Your muscles are having to work harder in layman's terms, and forcing your muscles to work harder to do those effective reps is what makes them adapt to the stimulus. Okay. So effective reps is an improvement on time under tension because it eliminates the ineffective reps that happen at the beginning of most people's sets. But this effective reps model or concept is still not perfect because it doesn't account for a few things. Like take, for example, the final negative that you do. This is even for researchers and people who talk about effective reps, they will also admit that when you do your final positive portion of a rep and then you're lowering the weight at the end there, that portion of the entire set may be the most hypertrophic portion. That might be the second, those seconds might be the seconds that drive hypertrophy the most. And so how do we explain that according to effective reps? You're not actually doing a rep, you're lowering the weight under control. Sure, I guess it's like kind of a rep, but you can't count it. It doesn't count as a rep, right? I mean, if you dropped the weight at the end there instead of lowering it under control, you still would have done the same number of reps in that set, wouldn't you? Because we count the positive portion. All right, but maybe that's a counting problem. Okay, but it also doesn't account for things like isometrics, right? So if you do like yielding isometrics and just hold a weight until you can't hold it anymore, we also know that that is very effective for driving hypertrophy. You haven't done a single rep there though. So how does the effective reps model apply? Clearly it doesn't. There are clearly holes in it. But that's true of any model. No model is perfect. They're only useful, as engineers like to say. So here's the model that I'm proposing. I suggest we get rid of time under tension, we get rid of effective reps, and we switch it out for what I'd want to call time near failure. Time near failure. time spent near failure, time in proximity to failure, however you want to say it. Time near failure is an easy way to talk about it. So this would be not how many reps do you do that are effective because they're close to failure, but how much time do you spend in the vicinity of failure. And it not only is it the time that's important, but the proximity to failure is also important. So if you get within 3 reps of failure and you spend a few seconds there, that's a limited amount of time, but it's also, you're kind of close to failure, but there's still a bit of space. Whereas if you get much closer to failure and you spend the same amount of time there as you would, if you did the further away, the 7th rep out of 10, let's say, and you spend 3 seconds doing that rep. If you spend 3 seconds doing a rep at 9 out of 10, you're closer to failure. So the proximity combined with the time is going to result in more hypertrophic signaling to your body. Okay, so there's 2 factors in here, time and proximity. Now, this explains why the last reps of a set would be the most effective, the ones that are closest to failure, because not only do you have that increased proximity to the failure point, but also those last reps take more time generally, right? Your 7th rep and your 9th or 10th out of 10 reps shouldn't take the same amount of time, because when you get to near the end, you're having to dig deeper. You're having to, use the last of what you got to make that happen. And the reps become grindier. They go slower. It just naturally, you will slow down, right? That's one of the signs that you're approaching failure, is that the rep slows down despite your best intentions to keep it going at a similar cadence. And so you have both increased proximity and increased time. And that explains why those reps would be more effective. Okay, it also explains things like, let's say, lengthened partials, which are like they exploded recently. People who experiment on themselves have known this for a long time, and it's been bro science for a long time. And it's like science catching up to bro science, which happens with surprising regularity. But lengthened partials, tend to be, or the way most people do them, is they do them at the end of a set. When you've already pushed the set completely, you can't complete another full rep. So then what you do is you tag on a few sort of, in the lengthened position, let's say a bicep curl, and you tag on a few of these little lengthened partials on the end there. And the reason you can do them is because a lot of your muscles and a lot of exercises are easiest in their lengthened position. This is the theory of zone training. If you're familiar with that, or J zone training, I do have a video about that as well. It's really fascinating stuff. But a lot of exercises are easiest in the lengthened position, and so it allows you to stay near failure for longer, and your proximity to failure is very high, and your time there is extended, and so that would explain it, right? It also explains why yielding isometrics are more effective for hypertrophy than overcoming isometrics. Like, let's say you're doing, an isometric bicep curl, and you're going to hold the weight in this locked position there. That's a yielding isometric. You're going to hold it there for as long as you can, as compared with an overcoming isometric, where you're trying to curl something really hard that you're unable to curl. In the yielding isometric, you're going to be able to stay close to failure, proximal to failure, for much longer than you will in the overcoming isometric, because in the overcoming one, you are overachieving. You're really pouring it out quickly. And, just like with powerlifting, right? Doing a single 1 rep maxes, 2 rep maxes, people can get very strong doing that, but they're not known for their hypertrophic effect. Just like overcoming isometrics aren't necessarily known for that hypertrophic effect, because you are getting close to failure. Like, especially if you're pushing 100% on an isometric contraction, you're really going super hard, overcoming. But the problem is that when you reach failure very quickly, and so the time near failure is limited, even if you do get there. Okay, it also would help explain why multiple sets as an approach doing 3 sets of 8 or whatever it is, would be an effective approach. Obviously, I'm a fan of HIIT training or higher intensity training with lower overall repetitions, but I'm not going to say that multiple set training isn't effective. So put it into the time near failure framework for a second. What do we end up with? Well, like let's say you can do 10 and you're leaving some reps in reserve so that you can do more sets later on. So you only do 8 out of 10. And then you do 8 out of 10 again. And then on the last set, you do 9 out of 10, for example, because you're worried about recovering in time for your workout tomorrow. Well, in that case, you've spent, 1, 8, probably like 5 or 6 reps close to failure. And in terms of time, you're accumulating time. Now, they're going to call that effective reps, most people, but, you're accumulating time near failure. The thing about it, though, is that it's inefficient. It's effective, it's just inefficient because you're also accumulating a whole lot of time that is not near failure, which is, all of the reps that lead up to the proximity to failure part of the set. And, that's where the issue comes in my opinion, right? Whereas if you take a higher intensity approach where you're aggressively trying to fatigue the muscle, you're not spending all that time so far away, so distal from failure. That's essentially wasted time, and not even wasted. It's a negative. It's not helping. It's hurting for the chance of injury. And so let's take a quick look at this visual that I put up here. So what we have here is a visual representation of some of the implications of the time near failure model concept. On the left side here, we have amount of work done. So that could be number of reps, number of sets. Down here, we have time near failure. So if we're doing very little work and spending very little time near failure, you can expect very little hypertrophic effect, but also very low risk. So someone who doesn't work out very much at all is going to be in this area. They're not going to grow. They're also not going to hurt themselves. Up here, if you're doing a lot of work, but you're not spending much time near failure, you're essentially just spending a lot of time in junk volume land. And you're going to get very little hypertrophic effect with high risk. So this is the kind of person that does like 500 bodyweight squats a day or something like that, right? Very few of those reps are anywhere near failure. Yeah, they'll get real good at bodyweight squatting until their knees and hips start to break down from the overuse. You don't want to be up here. This is a high intensity approach. This is what it would look like, trying to spend a lot of time near failure while doing little work. And so this is going to have a high hypertrophic effect while incurring very little risk on you if you're doing things properly. And up here, you have your traditional high volume approach to training, 4 to 6 days in the gym, multiple sets per exercise, rest in between. So you can do more repetitions than you would if you just went straight through. 15 to 20 sets per muscle group per week, this sort of thing. And you're going to have a high hypertrophic effect, assuming that you're not seriously overtraining and you're eating enough. But you're also going to be incurring high risk up here. So those are some of the implications, assuming that the time near failure model is, in fact, correct. So what does this tell us? This is something that's a bit of a caveat, perhaps, but I think not necessarily for everybody, is what we should be trying to achieve as people who want to, build larger, stronger muscles, maybe less in the strength, but certainly larger muscles, is that you want to maximize your time near failure across your training lifetime. And that is a very important portion of the advice that I'm giving. Across your training lifetime. So that means don't just think about the workout that you're currently doing, right? If you only focus on the workout that you're doing and you're like, I just have to maximize time near failure there, you may end up spending so much time near failure that the recovery takes like longer than you would ideally like. And then it actually ends up reducing the total time near failure that you are spending across your training lifetime. So the goal then is to dial in how much time near failure do I need at my current, level. And this is really where, again, like an idea like progressive overload also fits in. What we're trying to progressively overload is how much time we spend near failure. We're increasing that, and it makes sense then why more advanced exercisers would need more recovery time, because their ability to spend time near failure has increased, and that requires more recovery. Right? So think about it across your training lifetime. Now, for some people, that might mean that they want to work out more regularly and spend less time near failure, and just add in, they're saving pennies regularly. There's an increased risk of injury there, and if you're an adult, not if you're an adult, for adults, that is something that's up to you. Of course, you can make that decision, but other people might want to say, I'm gonna make a huge deposit into my train time near failure bank account, and then I'll wait a while, and then I'll put another big deposit in. And that's the HIIT approach to it. I hope that this helps clarify things for people, and I would recommend keeping it in mind during your next couple training sessions, and see if it doesn't help guide your efforts there. Okay, thank you so much for listening, everybody. I really appreciate the attention, and you're already someone's hero. Now you get to earn it. So enjoy that.